Thank you all for attending, and without further ado, turn it over to Brian.
Great, Jesse. Thank you very much for the introduction, and thank you everyone for taking the time this morning or this afternoon if anyone is overseas. So on behalf of David, I welcome you to the webinar this morning, again titled Increasing the Strategic Role of AP with Perceptive Intelligent Capture. So we'll spend the better part of the next hour basically doing a few high-level things in our agenda. What I'd like to do is start us off making sure everyone is familiar with Perceptive at a high level in our intelligent capture solution, and really give you a little overview as to what the solution can do for you, how it functions, and even talk about some customer results to sort of set the stage for David. And we'll transition to him sharing his desktop. And David's going to give us a live demonstration of intelligent capture for accounts payable today, and give you some insight and visual appreciation for how that solution looks and feels. So with that being said, I know that in speaking with Jesse earlier before we started, we have a great many existing Perceptive customers on the call today, but we also have some organizations that might be new to Perceptive. So I just want to make sure everyone understands that here within Perceptive software, we really have solutions that fall at a high level into one of two categories, right? We have a solution for process management, business process management. We have a solution suite around content management. And as the names entail, those solutions are really designed to help you manage your content and your business processes where maybe your core business applications, your ERP applications, might not be best suited. Okay, so that's really what we're talking about today, and we're really going to hone in. Well, before we do that, if we kind of break it down a little further, you know, we've got solutions across everything from capturing and managing content through its life cycle to being able to have access to search for that information. And we want to make sure that we're integrating that content and these workflow processes into, you know, your business process and into your applications so that this information is useful to you within the context of where your power users and key users and management teams and everyone else in the organization need access to that information on a daily basis. So this slide is a little busy because it really is meant to throw up there, kind of give you a snapshot of everything that we can bring to the table with our solution suite, from content imaging to electronic signature, workflow, you name it. But our focus today is really on the capture side of things, and even more specific to that, we're going to talk about intelligent capture. And when I oftentimes talk with people about capture, the first thing they think about is capturing documents, right? Well, we've got these paper invoices that come in the mail. We want to make them electronic. So capture to them means scanning paper. Or we've got a percentage of our vendors that send us invoices that come in via email or via fax. We want to capture those. So we want to capture those electronic documents or those electronic transmissions. So capturing documents is one thing, but we're going to drill it down even further today and talk about capturing information that is on those documents and then making that information useful to you. And so that's what's going to lead us into this concept of intelligent capture. So really what we're talking about doing here is, in an accounts payable world, taking a look at a process that is, you know, if you're consumed in paper today, it's probably pretty intensive in terms of being a human interactive process, right? You have invoices that come in, envelopes get opened, invoices get sorted, invoices get routed around and reviewed, and you have a team of people that eventually take those invoices, look at that information, and basically perform data entry functions and even validation and verification functions manually into your core business application, into your ERP system. And so what we want to do with intelligent capture is get away from that manual process, especially around the manual verification and data entry, and have those people focus more on handling exceptions. All right, so what percentage of those invoices that come in can the software intelligently extract and process the data? what percentage of those invoices that come into your organization can go straight through to being processed without an individual having to touch them and work them at all, right? So really that touchless pass, as the bottom part of the slide indicates, and really having those individuals on your team now just focus their time on the exception-based invoices that need to be handled. That's really what we're driving at with Intelligent Capture. So it's funny, I was actually yesterday up in Boston at an existing customer having a conversation around this, and they were talking about how the marketplace is pretty confusing, right? You hear a lot of terms, a lot of acronyms out there. I always say to folks that when an existing customer comes to me and says, hey, Brian, do you have the capability to, well, they'll say, do you have the capability to OCR invoices? But you know, really what they're talking about is, do you have the ability to extract information off of invoices so we don't have to do this manual data entry? So OCR is a pretty common term out there, but OCR is different from Intelligent Data Capture, or IDC, right? So OCR is optical character recognition, reading characters off of these documents, converting those characters to text, and doing something with them. But Intelligent Data Capture gets us into a lot of validation, verification, business rules, and it also allows for a setup and configuration of the system that, as we'll talk about in a second, does not require a lot of templates, or any templates at all, actually, I should say. It really helps you to maximize the benefit you're getting from these various document types and formats that you might be receiving. So Intelligent Data Capture is taking things a lot further than what OCR would. And I throw this slide up in this paragraph, and if anyone's here on the phone trying to read this, you're probably not having much trouble doing that. You're able to pretty much bang through this paragraph and read all of these words without skipping a beat. And I throw this up here because this is the non-technical explanation as to how Intelligent Capture works. It works very much like the human brain does. So part of that thinking is, okay, you know, the human brain, if it's taking a look at these words, as long as it's grabbing the first letter and the last letter of a word, the in-between letters can be jumbled up, and you're still able to read it. Well, there are some words in here, right? Like when you guys read this first sentence, I couldn't believe that I could actually understand. Well, that word could also be cloud. But your brain didn't probably even think that that could be the word cloud. And the reason is it took those 5 characters, but it then associated them to the words around it, to the context within that sentence, and it interprets it as the word could. And so that's how Intelligent Capture is going to work. If you say, well, Brian and David, we have, you know, 5,000 vendors, we have 5,000 different formats of an invoice, they all look different. Don't you have to create a template for each of those vendors so that your system can then accurately process information? And our answer is, no, you don't. And that's because the way Intelligent Capture is architected, it's working like the human brain. And so once you have the system set up on a couple of examples so it just knows you're looking for an invoice, from that point forward, it doesn't matter where the information lies, if that is a one-page or a multi-page invoice, or if you've ever seen an invoice from that vendor before, it's going to find the information that you're looking for. So as I mentioned a few seconds ago, Intelligent Capture is working without you, and when I say you, whether it's folks in accounts payable or your IT team, not having to set up templates on a vendor-by-vendor or invoice-by-invoice basis, or worry about anchors or zones in order to find information like your invoice number, your invoice date, your customer name, your various line item detail. And the other thing here that you can see on this list, you know, we're not just looking for a solution here that can process invoices. So although we're focused on accounts payable today, you can set Intelligent Capture to classify many different document types and then process those documents, extract the information out of those unstructured forms, and provide that data to your system so that you can actually make use of it. So the focus today might be accounts payable invoices, but we could also be talking about customer orders, bills of lading, transcripts, any other document type that you might have. And Intelligent Capture will process those documents, tell you what those documents are through a classification process, and then based on the document type, go forward from there in its extraction. So intelligent capture, high level, we're talking about reducing or eliminating manual data entry, first and foremost, right? So if you have a team of 10 people performing a data entry function on invoices today, if the software is able to extract 95% of the fields accurately, and now you only have to validate and correct maybe 5% of that 5% of those fields, then that's pretty powerful, right? So that's the starting point of a benefit of the solution. But because we're not doing, or your team isn't doing data entry, you're also in a position now to reduce risk of data entry errors. So another side benefit of this automation. And just being able to automate the business process altogether, being able to perform validation functions and so forth, is all inherent in the benefit of the capture technology. So I think what David's going to show you today are really some key steps that I'll just verbally outline here. When you use intelligent capture, sort of the first thing that you end up doing is you capture the document. So I mentioned earlier you've got these invoices coming in the mail, email, fax, and so forth. So those documents do have to be scanned or captured in their electronic format. So that would be the starting point. And then when those documents get into intelligent capture, the first thing it's going to do is classify those documents. So we've stuck 100 invoices in the scanner, and it recognized them automatically as invoices. Or maybe you set the system up to break them down so that it's not just recognizing those 100 as invoices, but it's recognizing that 50% of those are U.S. invoices, 20% of those are German invoices, another percentage Russian invoices, so on and so forth. Or many different document types. This is an invoice, this is a check, this is a bill of lading, all within that 100-page stack. And once the system extracts that classifies those documents, then it's going to start to extract the data, right? So we're going to extract your header detail, your footer detail, your line item detail, whatever information you need out of those documents, the software is going to find it and extract it. And that's what OCR is, right? Optical character recognition. But intelligent capture is going to go a lot further than that. And it's going to take that information and it's going to validate it, let's say against your vendor tables and your PO tables, and make sure information is accurate. Is it extracting a character? Should it be the number 6 or the letter B? Right? Is it a 0 or an O? Is this a valid vendor or is this not a valid vendor? And it's going to provide thresholds of confidence and accuracy of how it's interpreting this information, and you can set your threshold so that depending on what you're comfortable with, information above a certain threshold can go right through, and information that it's not as confident of and you want to make sure someone's going to verify and double check, insert themselves into that process, they'll be able to do that. So now that that information has been classified, extracted, and validated, what's left to do manually? Well, we're not manually doing any data entry, and we're not manually having to do any line item matching because the software is doing that for you. And you're just focused in on those exceptions, on maybe what doesn't match, what's over a certain threshold, your business rules that would warrant an individual stepping into the process. But other than that, we're eliminating that manual step, and we're integrating it with your application so that that data can go right in. So whether you're running Oracle or SAP, or PeopleSoft, being able to take that extracted and validated information and put it into your financial application so you don't have to do the data entry, and having that all work seamlessly is what intelligent capture is going to provide to you. And this is what David will show you from an experience of an administrator and an end user and so forth in today's demo. So before we pass it over to David, just what I wanted to do was throw up a couple of existing customer scenarios where we can see some statistics of the benefits that they received. So, we don't have to read these off one by one, but I think as you look across the customer base and look at their success stories, you see a lot of common themes. You see common themes around doing more with less, being able to handle more volume with the same amount of people, reducing number of folks in the department that were performing data entry functions and allowing them to move into other areas that are more value added to the organization. early payment discounts. If you're able to process these invoices quicker, are you able to run after discounts that you're no longer, or that you previously weren't able to obtain? You know, Amgen just taking 1,000 invoices and being able to process those with just 2 people. So these are all pretty powerful numbers here. As I change the slide on you again, I think some of the same type of information around processing time and the number of people it takes to process invoices and staff reductions and reducing errors and all of those key points that would make your business case for you going forward. So really, I just wanted to hopefully set the stage for us a little bit as to why we're here so that David can roll into a live demo. So with that being said, and I know we're going to open things up for questions and answers at the end of the session. So with that being said, we're going to transition this over to David, who can share his desktop with you, and he'll get us into the actual live demo. And David, I think it's going to be all yours here in a second.
Thanks, Brian and Jesse. Good morning or afternoon, as the case may be, to everybody online. And so, you know, we're going to spend about half an hour here, and we're going to talk about intelligent capture and various aspects of it. As Brian mentioned, you know, some of the things that, and I'm really going to show you soup to nuts scenario. It is, I'm going to stay fairly non-technical, but I'll throw some technical things in there for people who are interested, just to sort of see under the covers how some of this works. But we're really going to cover the whole thing. So some things I want to point out. Yeah, I'll point out a number of different things as we go through, but really just to give you a feel for it and how things work. As Brian mentioned, this is what we're going to look at today, is a packaged AP solution specifically for invoices. This is document agnostic, so there are, you know, different document types can all be processed, different field types. So today we are going to concentrate on AP, and this is a packaged solution. So all right, so that being said, I'll just dive into things here. I'm going to show you these things are all from a user perspective. So what I got here, I'm just going to give you a little hint of, just so that you can see what I'm doing. I do have a real-time reporting environment. And so what I did here is, just in the interest of time, I ran through some documents, and this is, we're going to go into more detail on what this reporting environment is later, but it's dashboards, it's reports, it's even ad hoc, drill down, all things you're used to seeing real time. And what I did here is I put 22 invoices through just so that we'd have something to look at. And so I can see here I put 22 in. I have 8 that are sitting there that have some type of issue is, and as Brian mentioned, this is exception-based processing now. So these are things that had some issue with it that requires a human eyeball, and then 14 that are actually 100% waiting there to go through. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and process these, and we're going to see these numbers change as we go through, and I'll explain what that means as we go through and what these numbers mean. So I just wanted to show you that just because we're going to build that out as we go through. Okay, so first, as mentioned, exception-based processing. What I see here is this is based on my user ID, what I am supposed to verify. These are the things that, and I'm going to use the terms here, verification. Verification is the human eyeball to come in and look at exceptions. You saw I had 22 documents. I have them batched up in groups of 5. It's just the unit of measure that they move through the system. You see these are these 22 documents that I have staged here. So I'm just going to click on one of these and we'll see. Okay, in this environment, and also too, let me just point out too, this is thick client or web-based. I'm using the full client here, but this is also a web-based. This verification interface could be web-based as well. So what I'm looking here is just to give you a little bit of navigation. Document on the right. These are all the fields that were extracted from the document. There's some additional information at the bottom, for example, the actual field that was extracted, and some messages and things like the classification. It shows me the document number. So just a little bit of housekeeping just in terms of what we're looking at. Okay, so first thing to point out, remember these were in batches of 5. I am on document number 4 of the batch of 5, and I can page within. This is a multi-page document. There's 3 pages for this particular invoice as well. But I do want to point out that I'm already on document 4. Why is that? Because document 1, 2, and 3 did not have any issues. And so what we're looking here is document, again, fields on the left, color coding. Green is good, and it means it passed all the checks. So what happened here, as Brian mentioned, this invoice would have come in via email, via fax, via a file share, any type of ingestion point, and then run through this process. It was classified as an invoice, and then once it was classified as an invoice, there's certain fields. We got about 65 out of the box that, based on that document type, it's going to try to find these fields on the document. Green, again, good. Green means the field was extracted. It passed the format checks. For example, the date is in the correct format for a date, and it actually, you see, well, I'll just real quickly format check. There's math checks. So, for example, do the line items, totals all match up to the total? Do the subtotals plus additional charges match up to the total? On a line item, does the quantity times the unit price equal total? So those are all examples of math checks, as well as business rule checks too. For example, is the unit price that I was billed on the invoice within 5% of the unit price on the purchase order? So those are all things that come into play. So green means extracted, passed format check, passed math check, passed business rule check. And as an example, I can, so as you see, this one would have gone, this is what's called straight-through processing. This one had no errors and would just have been passed downstream to the system as we go through this. And you can see as I click on here, I can see, for example, there's where the purchase order was pulled. It's showing me here, this is the actual ink on the page. This is the data that was extracted from that ink. And I want to show you this one because of the date, for example. You see that the date that was extracted from the page, we actually converted that into date just for uniformity, because the goal downstream is to take all this information that did not require data entry and did not require human validation and pass that to a downstream system. And so for downstream, I want to have some standardization of my date, so we converted that date to what I want downstream. Okay, so this is just, like I say, an example of one that, it's line items, extracted the whole thing. Okay, and also purchase order and non-purchase order. We'll see a little bit of both. So again, another one went 100% through, 100% correct. So I'm going to go back to, this is the one that had, and I'll just point out one here too, multi-language. We support, I think it's now up to, it's over 30 languages, including the double byte ones, the Korean, Thai, Japanese. We support those languages as well. So, multi-language invoices, not a problem for international. Okay, so this was back, we were back on document 4, and this was the first place that there was an exception. And you see it's highlighting for me here what the exception was. And what it's basically saying is more than one vendor ID appears to match the invoice. Okay, how does Perceptive Intelligent Capture work? And I'm just going to throw a little tidbit out here because it's not template-based. It's very, very different from template-based. It really is a probability model based on the human brain, the same way that a human thinks by, well, I have past experience, and so based on what I know, I can make inferences going forward. And it's the same thing that somebody would do looking at this. And so what we're going to see here in the probability, what happened in this particular case is that there's ink on the page. This invoice came from Huhtamaki Packaging. And as I mentioned in the steps, OCR, it did the classification, it did the extraction. And then the next step in that process is validation, where it's taking the data that was extracted, bouncing that data back against a system of record, which could be as simple as a database or as complex as a full-blown application, an ERP system, something like that. But the validation is really against your single version of the truth. And so what happened in this case is it tried to find Huhtamaki Packaging in my vendor master file and confirm that vendor, but it doesn't exist. And so what happened here is it found dice.com. You see 4939 Collection Center Drive, Chicago, Illinois, 60693. Very close address, but not 100% match. And I'm going to also throw out two quick concepts here, because again, very similar to the way a human being thinks. There's the concept of threshold and distance. Threshold is basically confidence. It says, how confident am I in a piece of information, and does it exceed a certain threshold required for confidence? So for example, if I'm requiring a 90% level of confidence for that field to match and it comes in at 89, well, that's not going to pass through, and that's going to get flagged as an exception. There's also the concept of distance. And distance is the same as a human being says, well, what's my next best guess? You know, I'm fairly confident in this piece of information, but it could be this or that. And the real thing I want to introduce here is the concept of fuzziness. If you're familiar, you know, in things 0 or 1, yes or no, true, false, absolutes. Fuzziness introduces the concept of 10,000 shades of gray. So it's not just 0 or 1, but you can say things, well, this is 93.87% correct, or 62.4% correct. So that's what happens here. So there's that concept of threshold and distance to determine the validity of the data. All right, so why do I bring that up, what happened here? Because what happened here is Hudamaki. I'm going to look here and see what is in my vendor master file. And what it's showing me here is these are the probabilities of these vendors in my vendor master file. So when it tried to validate this vendor against my vendor master file, it said, well, it's 90% like this one, but this is what I was talking about distance. So maybe that may have been enough to say, yes, this is the right one, but the distance is, I have a lot of guesses that are very close. Again, the same way a human being thinks, how confident am I in the information I know, and what's my next best guess? And if there's a lot of things clustered together, this basically implies that you're really not certain. And what happened here is I actually do not have Hudamaki. I can type in here, and again, because it's fuzzy, it doesn't even have to be an exact search. I'll try to get close, but let me see if I have anything even close to that. I don't have anything even close to that in my vendor master file. So what happened here is actually Hudamaki is not in my vendor master file. I don't want to pay on this invoice. I don't want to just process it through. I want to send it to a workflow queue such that somebody in my AP department can look at this vendor and see why they're not in the vendor master file and add them too. So I'm just going to go ahead and flag this invoice as vendor not found. And again, this reason right here, this data field will control how this document gets processed downstream in workflow and to downstream back-end systems. So good, I made one correction there. I'm done. And as I go through this, I'm just going to show you a couple, a few different kinds of corrections. But these are the kind of things that you typically see in real life. And again, here too took me to next document where there was a potential issue. In this one, did not find the date because there was a little distance here between the things. I can zoom in and see that here's the invoice date right here. I'm just going to go ahead and lasso that and pop it into that field. And again, it's going to convert it to standardize to pass downstream, and boom, that batch is gone. So those 5 documents are now being passed either to workflow or to back-end ERP system or however you want to, whatever downstream system you then want to pass these invoices to. Okay, so I process those documents. Remember, I talked to you about the real-time environment. I want to bump over here and just to show you what's happened here. Okay, so remember, and I'm going to talk about some of these numbers. All right, remember I originally had 22 documents. I touched 2 of them. Remember there were 2 documents, document number 4 and 5 in that batch that I touched. There's still 6 out there that are waiting for me to take an eyeball on them. 11 that are ready to go through. They're just stuck in the batch. And 5 have already been exported downstream. Okay, so that's just the numbers as we go through. I also want to point out what these bars are, so what I'm looking at here. Okay, 2 concepts that come into play. The first is correctness. Correctness is at the field level, and what that says is of all the fields that I extracted from the documents, how many of those fields did I get correct, meaning they were extracted and they were validated, meaning the green ones that we saw. Well, 99%, because what happened of those 5 documents, I actually pulled 150 fields off those 5 documents, and you saw I only had to correct 2. That's that verification. I touched 2 fields, that the vendor and that date field. So 99% correctness, that's at the field level. And if I want to, I can drill down and see, the actual documents that make that up and the fields that were associated with those and what the validity fields was. And you can see here this one, remember I had to correct that invoice date. That's correctness. And again, the value here didn't have to data enter those fields all the time associated with that, plus all the validation. And the validation was correct because it was against your single version of the truth. So that's the correctness thing. The other bar here is called straight-through processing. Straight-through processing is at the document level. And so what that is saying is how many documents went straight through without needing any corrections at all. You saw of that batch of 5, I touched 2 documents of the 5. That's what the 60% is representing. So 3 of those 5 documents were 100% correct, went straight through, did not require any verification at all, and then you see the 99% correctness. So just to explain what you're looking at here, the correctness is at the field level, the straight through is at the document level. You saw 99% correctness at the field, 60% on the straight through. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and just do a few more corrections here, just again, just give you a flavor for the types of corrections, the kinds of things that can occur. The next batch popped open because that first batch already went through and was exported downstream. I'll mention here briefly, too, on that export step. So the integration downstream, the export could be as simple as a comma-delimited file, or it could be as complex as submitting this invoice directly into the ERP system. And as I mentioned, it could be to workflow, to your content. We saw that one with the vendor, how that vendor not found would go to a add new vendor workflow queue. So the downstream integration is as simple or as tight and as you need it to be. Again, it could be as simple as just a file transfer, a comma delimited file, a name value pair file, so it would have the field name and the value next to it. It could be an XML file, so if you have a web services type of integration, that's all available. And again, tight integration with ERP systems, SAP, PeopleSoft, as well as obviously very tight integration with perceptive content and workflow and all those components as well. So that's the downstream thing. We're back here in verification. I'm just going to do a few more quick corrections here just to, again, give you a sample of the flavor. In this example, this is one of those where OCR left me a little bit high and dry here. And you guys are familiar with images. You are probably familiar with images are not always perfect. They get stains on them. The image quality is not always what it needs to be. And so, for example, in this one, the actual text was written over, and you can see when I hover over that text, that's showing me what OCR'd, that first step in the process. And because of that line, the way it was typed on the form, you see it actually OCR'd as 28,02 and then period 201 with a register sign at the end. So that's what got passed to me. And you can you understand you're looking for a format, and that did not pass that check. So what I need to do here is this. Again, I am going to use what's there, and I'm just going to pop that into that field, make that correction to 14, and pass that downstream. Okay. One quick thing that I want to show you here on a document that did not stop, because it did go straight through, but I do want to point it, I want to call your attention to. You see it is straight through 100%, and again, I can click on, if I want to see where the fields were, as I click on each of these fields, it's showing me where that field exists on the document, as well, including the line items and all this that were extracted. But what I want to show you here is the matching, because line item matching is a big part of the validation process that you go through in processing invoices. And the goal here is automation. So the more we can automate, the better we can streamline the process and improve the time frame and improve the correctness and all those things that we can do. So line pairing is a big example of how we can do that. And I want to show you how that fuzzy matching comes into play here. So what happens is when we process these invoices, when we send them downstream, we can do line pairing against the data source. And what I'm going to do is, because it's a demo, I'm going to go ahead and do this line pairing live here just to show you what this is. So what I'm saying here is I'm going to send this information to my ERP system, and I want it to validate all these line items, and I want to do line pairing and actually pair up these line items against the purchase order. And another thing I'll call out here, notice the purchase order, there's actually two purchase orders that are potentially on this invoice, and it does not tell me at the line item level which line item goes to which invoice. This all goes to this fuzzy matching. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to send that to the ERP system, did fuzzy match, and I'm going to show you now where this came up. So what happened here is it matched up this line against this purchase order, and you notice there's two, and this line. Okay, I'm going to show you where this is. As I mentioned before, the validation could be against a data source, or it could be against ERP system. In this example, I have my purchase order data just in a SQL Server database. And what I did here is I just selected the first 1,000 rows. So let me go out here and look. So I need purchase order 450029, line 34 is what that matched up to. All right, PO 450029, line 34. Okay, on my purchase order in my database or in my ERP system, I ordered backup executive serve ed 9. I ordered two of them for $100 a piece. What I received on this invoice was backup exec server edition 9. Notice the text does not match exactly. And here the unit price is 100. Here the unit price is 105. Remember that slide that Brian put up that had all the words on it that were all garbled? This is an example of that fuzziness coming into play again, to be able to do this kind of matching within tolerances to allow this to go through. You're still green because it matched within tolerance. This 105 within a 5. I have a 5% tolerance on the unit price there, and likewise with the text to be able to do this kind of matching. Very, very big thing in line pairing to be able to do that, because it doesn't have to be 0 to 1. And you saw when we did the vendor search how it uses that probabilistic model to determine the correct information. It applies to line matching too. This is throughout this this software. It really is based on that whole probability thing. Is very important in how this works. And again, it models the human brain the same way a human being would do this kind of matching. It's modeled the same way. So as another example on this one, so you see it matched the various line items against POs. And also I'm going to point out this last one. What it came out to, what is this, PO 29, this was 29 as well, line 11. Let me look at that one. 45029, line 11. I ordered a Brainware logo shirt medium. I ordered 10 of them at $10 each for a total of $100. What I got was Beware medium shirt box for $100. So what it did is it matched, again, using that fuzziness, matched up that line item. I said, well, I ordered 10 of them for $100, and I got a box of them for $100. Again, based on the business rule that I have, and this is out of the box. This is the way the system is set up out of the box. That and those parameters, those thresholds and distances and business rules are all customizable. But this is, the way it's set up. It matched that up within tolerances, and you see the unit measure box to match those 10 shirts up to the one box. So again, the goal being to improve your automation and to cut down on the amount of data entry and the amount of time. All right, so I said that one was 100%. I did want to just show you that line pairing because it's so important and that fuzziness to be able to get those kind of results. This is just another example where the date is really spread out. I'm just going to pop that in there. Boom, that batch is ready to go. That batch is done. Okay, I just got a few more examples here that I'm going to run through real quick. And in this example, this again shows validation against a back-end data source. And what this is what happened in this particular example is, and it's highlighted here in red, purchase order does not exist, but yet I got an invoice with a purchase number on it. And I can zoom in here. It's showing me at the bottom, this is the ink on the page. This is the data that was extracted. So this is what it was OCR'd, and then it was extracted. And I can look on here and see, well, you know, actually that is exactly the right number. That is the purchase order number. And so I have this invoice that I have a purchase order number on it, but I don't have any record of that purchase order in my ERP system or in my system of record. So this, again, like the earlier example, I don't want to make a correction here because that is the correct purchase order number, but I do want to send it to a workflow queue for somebody to look at this to figure out why I don't have a purchase order for this invoice because it has a PO number on it. So again, I'm going to flag that. That's going to control as this gets passed downstream. This invoice is going to go to the workflow queue for somebody to look at this and verify what happened in this particular instance. So I flag that. Go ahead and send that correction through. That batch is good. You saw in that one I only had to make that one correction of that whole 5 documents. Similar thing here, purchase order does not exist. I can look and see, yep, the ink on the page, yep, that is exactly what was extracted. It is 100% correct. I'm going to do the same thing. Go ahead and flag that one as a missing purchase order so that it goes to the right workflow queue. In this example, remember earlier I was talking about the math. This is one of those where, again, because of something on the page, maybe there was a mark on the page or handwriting or something, you see here, it's trying to validate that the total of the line items matches up to the total here, but because that line was through, this actually OCR'd as 3 separate words, $13, a parenthesis, and then period 00, which doesn't match the format check. So it got 13. It got that much of it that it thinks that's what it is, but missed the 5. So here, all I need to do is just make that correction to add that 5 in there. It passes all the math checks, and boom, that batch is gone. And last but not least here, I have an invoice that what this one happened in this case, and again, this goes back to validation, is this, when it bounced back against my system of record or my ERP system, it said, this purchase order is actually flagged, is marked in your ERP system for electronic payment. So you probably don't want to process this paper invoice because you very likely would be paying on it twice because it's already set up to go out electronically, so I should not have gotten a paper invoice. So what do I do in this case? I could do the same thing with the queue. I could send it to a queue to have it go out that way. Or I actually, in this case, what I'm going to do is just show you just a different example. Is I'm actually just going to pull this invoice out of the process. I'm just going to go ahead and void it and say I don't even want to look into this invoice. I'm going to send this to a dead letter queue, and it's not going to get passed downstream at all. Okay, boom. So that's everything I did. You saw I had those 22 documents. I made roughly about a dozen corrections there, and now that's everything that, based on my credentials, that's everything that I could see, and and I'm done. Okay, so I do want to just show you back out here in this real-time reporting environment again. And let me just go ahead and bump this, and we'll see. And hopefully, I think they should have all exported at this point. Yep, just to see what endgame looks like. Okay, so remember, I've imported 22 documents. I had to touch 8 of them. I exported 21 because I pulled that one electronic payment invoice out. Of those 21 documents, I processed 630 fields, 630 fields that I did not have to data enter and that were validated. I had to touch 2% of those fields, 99% correctness. Again, I know it's 101, but it's just because of rounding. And 61% went straight through. So basically, 3 out of 5 documents went straight through, 100% correct, did not require any intervention at all. And again, I can drill down on these if I want to see, what the results were of what the fields were, what I had to correct or something like that. For example, here on the invoice date, remember I corrected that a few times, so I only had an 85% correctness. Still within my bands. I have these set for, I think it's 60, 80, 100 in terms of red, yellow, green. So 85 is still an acceptable range. But I may want to look at that and do something about that. And this is where, too, reporting comes in handy. Because as Brian was mentioning, I want to maybe look for things like early payment discounts or things where if I'm processing it at a certain level of correctness, that I can improve my relationship with my vendors. So I have some other reports here. I can look at things from different perspectives. These are more detailed reports. I'm going to look at this one from an invoice perspective, and maybe I want to look at a specific invoice number or just PO or non-PO. This would be an example of a parameterized report. So based on that, I can enter some parameters on the screen. I'm just going to go ahead and basically accept defaults to see everything out there. But this is from the invoice perspective, and it's showing me for invoices, basically for different, all the invoices that are processed. And if I want to look at a particular one, I can look here and see, for example, this particular invoice. I can see all the fields that were extracted from the invoice. As I mentioned, there's, as an invoice, we have 65 fields plus out of the box. So these are all the fields that are potentially, some of them not on particular documents. So, for example, if this one wasn't Canadian, it would not have, certain taxes or such thing. So that's why some of these are blank. But showing you the fields that were extracted, what was extracted, what the final value was, and if there was a correction. So, for example, here, remember invoice date. It was invalid. I did have to correct that one. It did not extract, and that was what the final value was. So I can see that. I can also go back. Let's see here too. When I was looking at that, if I wanted to actually look at that document too, I can go back and actually see. So I can look at that, and if I want to, I can actually go back and actually look at the actual document to see too what happened there. So that's from the invoice perspective. As I mentioned, maybe I want to look at that from a vendor perspective, and I want to see, well, what kind of spend am I doing with particular vendors, and what are my results from particular vendors? So, for example, here, I'm going to use that other example again. This one, maybe, something here. So, for example, this invoice date, you see this is red. So for this vendor, maybe every time I get an invoice from this vendor, the invoice dates are always coming in bad because they say maybe they're that one where they're typing over the line when they send me invoices. So every single invoice they send me, that line is going through the date, and so it's not extracting properly. So this is where I can work with that vendor and say, hey, could we maybe do something with your invoice to help our processing to be able to get a better straight through for you, and also things like you can look at these and use these reports to go back through and say, with certain vendors and say, hey, look, I'm getting 100% straight through for you, and I'm processing these invoices in a fraction of the time that I do. Am I eligible for discounts? Do we want to do something with that? So these reports come in very handy, not only in terms of gauging what's going on in your system, but in terms of justification of what you're doing in terms of your automation with your relationships with your vendors and such. And likewise, too, if you want to look at things from a verifier perspective to see what's being corrected. So maybe I want to see what's going straight through versus what's being corrected. So these are all the documents that went straight through. And again, I can look at the fields all the fields that went through and actually look at the document. Or if I want to see a particular individual, this is me. Remember, I touched 8 documents here, and I want to see the documents that had issues. So I can do, again, it's dashboard reporting, so I can see the big picture. Drill down capability here, real-time stats. I can do parameterized reporting from different perspectives, invoice, vendor, verifier, and 2, I want to point out here too, these are just some of my favorites. We do for the invoices, we do have out of the box for accounts payable. There's, these are just a sample of these are out of the box invoices. These are accounts payable specific reports. These are as well just generalized reports. So if you want to look at your extraction rates or your field extraction or invalid fields or a snapshot of your throughput summaries or the average by dates, average with line pairings, very, very detailed statistics about your environment. So I think that's pretty much everything I wanted to cover. As I mentioned, we saw the whole shebang. We imported I had documents already staged. We did the verification here where we made some corrections. We looked at the real-time stats of what was going on in the environment. We talked about how some of those things are going on. And 2, just a couple quick things here too, as Brian mentioned, structured and unstructured documents. This solution is specifically an out-of-the-box solution for invoices, but we do have solutions for other types of documents, as well as can do customized solutions if there's things that you have, for example, things like mailroom. You have a stack of paper that you need to do sorting and indexing on. So I want to look at the stack of paper. I want to be able to classify them into buckets, and I want to be able to pull off a few index fields from that document such that I can link that straight into my document management system. All those things are possible with Capture. We talked about the fuzziness and how that's used to do the extraction, and how it's also used to do the validation to improve your results for your automation, and the value of that in terms of the less data entry and the validation, those things that are human resource intensive, so now those people become exception-based and they can add value to the process because they're just looking at exceptions and can do more value-add type of activities versus those types of things. So I know we're running up against time here. That's pretty much what I wanted to cover. And so I'll turn it back over to Brian and Jessica if you want to wrap up here.
Yeah, thank you guys. That was great. It looks like we had a couple of questions come in during the presentation. So see if we can kind of talk through those for a few minutes before we cut it off. The first question is, can the threshold of confidence be set by a vendor?
By a vendor, oh, meaning can it be specific for certain vendors? I think is, no, it really is it's at the invoice processing level. So, meaning I think what you're asking is like, if this vendor, can I lower the threshold for certain vendors if I know that that vendor has a lot of problems or something like that? Now, it's really set at the system level because you're going to process invoices. You know, you potentially have hundreds of thousands of vendors, and so no, that really is done at the invoice level and the field level.
Okay, great. Thank you. One more question. How does this compare to the ImageNow application plan?
Oh, so ImageNow, great question. The ImageNow application plan is really interrogating a user screen, not a document. So what the application plan is doing is you're looking at some application, PeopleSoft, a web page. It could be an actual application on the PC, so it doesn't have to be web-based. But you're looking at an application screen, and the application plan, what it does is it interrogates that screen and uses that data to look at things. What we're really talking about intelligent capture is extracting from a document. So that's really the way it differs, is we're pulling the information off the page versus from the application screen. So the application screen is within the application. You may have documents. So if you're looking at a vendor application screen, for example, you may have a lot of documents that are associated with that vendor, and all those documents, the data that's contained on those documents, that's what we're talking about here in intelligent capture. So it's more the data on the document versus the data from an application screen.
Okay, that seemed to answer the question. Thank you very much. How about Brian? Do you have tools or people who can help build a business case for anyone in senior management?
Yeah, that's actually that's an awesome question. Yeah, we do. So there's a couple of things. We have tools and calculators and spreadsheets, but I would encourage anyone, do we have people that can do that? I know that I work with my customers on that all the time. So I would say for existing customers who are on the call today, if this is of interest to you, that you should reach out to your account executive, and that individual can work with you. That could even include, and probably should include, some on-site discovery into your process and your volume so that they can point some things out to you and work on constructing that business case. We've got a bunch of other resources as well outside of quote-unquote sales that us as account executives can pull in to the conversation. So yeah, there are documents out there and spreadsheets that we can give to you. but to make it more thorough, you probably want to engage your account executive and really do some discovery and work together to put that in place. So all the above.
Okay, great. And since we do only have a few minutes left, I wanted to go back to the Image Now question, David, that you had previously answered. If we're using Image Now, how does the software integrate with that? This is a question added on to the previous Image Now application plan question.
Okay, so the way that so those, and I'm not really sure, how they're using Image Now today. But for example, things like today, if you're using an e-form to manually enter data, that data could be populated from an intelligent capture process. So again, you're trying to minimize that data entry, and so that's one way it could be done is sort of as a complement to an e-form, rather than having to manually enter data into an e-form, being able to extract that data from the document and populate the e-form that way. So that's one way it integrates. It also, we saw integration with the workflow, so the data on the documents, you can use that extracted data to control how things go through workflow, and also things like the indexing and such. As I mentioned, if you have documents and you want to those index fields, you may be using an application plan today to index those fields. You could also use the data on the document to create index or custom fields as well. So it really is just any place in Image Now in the content where you have data that is on the document that you want to be able to utilize. Perceptive Intelligent Capture is the means to get that data off the paper.
Okay, great. So it sounds like, too, there may be some follow-up depending on how the customer is using Image Now as well, but thank you very much. And then one last question I think we can sneak in. How are the invoices loaded into the system? Are they individually scanned?
So the ingestion point can really be anywhere. It could be coming via email, via fax. It could be a file share that's being pulled. It really doesn't matter where they're coming in from. And that batching too, you saw that I had them batched in groups of 5. That's just because I wanted to hold up some documents. So every document could be its own individual document, or you could group things up together. But no, they can come in from any data source. They can be ingested on a time schedule or as soon as they show up. So you could say every hour I want to pull, or every 5 minutes, or as soon as it appears somewhere, it automatically gets ingested and runs through the process. Because it really doesn't matter on document type and how it gets pulled in. It just like say wherever it came from a scanner. It could have gone from a scanner and been scanned to a file share, or you even could force one through if you had some documents out there. But it really is just a starting point. It's just it's sort of in the middle of other things. But no, ingestion from any of those and on schedule or based on any kind of criteria. You could say if one comes in from this source, the process those immediately, and these other ones are not as high priority, so they can, and you can set those priorities and such however you want those things to process. And again, like the last question, and as Brian mentioned, we would really strongly recommend that you work with your account executive and look at something like this specifically in the context of, 1, what you're doing today, and 2, where you're trying to get to. And then we would work with you to make sense about how those various pieces fit together and where it makes the most sense for you to connect things together.
Okay. And I'm just going to try to sneak this one last question in because it has to do with your specific presentation, David. The customer asked, I noticed a yellow shading around the irritating areas of the invoice. How does the system decide which areas to look at? He says, I may have missed that, but is it determined which fields by roping and zoning the areas?
Great question. No, it is not. Great question. Although you can do some of that too, but no, this is a structured or unstructured document. So really what it's doing is those yellow things that you saw, those were it's similar to the way a human being does. Like say you're looking at a document, there's what's called candidates. So you look at various candidates in the document, and then there's actually the system has been trained up. It's been trained on, I think there's 32 invoices that the system has been trained on. So for example, an invoice date, what we did is we looked at the documents. It looks at all the dates. You can imagine documents, particularly if there's line items, the document could have hundreds of dates on it. And then we taught it which one was the invoice date, and it learns that based on the context. So then it learns, so of all the candidates, we told it which one was the right one, and then it learns based on the context. So it looks at all the words around it, and that's how it does it. So it does it based on the context, same way a human does. So the short answer, it looks at all the candidates based on the learn set, and this one is already out of the box, so it's already been trained up, and then does that based on, chooses the best candidate based on the probability of what it's learned in the past. This is, again, the same way a human being does, and if it matches those threshold and distance, pop, that's the one that goes through.
Great, thank you. We have officially run out of time, so I'm going to end this. For any of the questions that were not answered, I apologize, but we will follow up with you. And like both Brian and David have said, if there are additional questions, please do not hesitate to reach out to your account executive. And again, we thank you for attending the webinar, Increasing the Strategic Role of AP with Perceptive Intelligent Capture, and we hope everyone has a great day.